Good morning. Hello, my name is Kirsten Vega, and I'm the Program Associate for California Humanities, and I'm here with my colleague Felicia.
Hi, everyone. I'm Felicia Kelley, Project and Evaluation Director at California Humanities, based here in Los Angeles.
And today we're just going to give a brief presentation about some of the grant offerings at California Humanities. So in case you haven't heard of us before, California Humanities is an independent nonprofit and partner of the National Endowment for the Humanities. Since 1975, we have been promoting the humanities as relevant and meaningful ways to understand the human condition. And we fund, create, and support humanities projects across the state of California. So for over 40 years, we have been funding projects, and we have awarded to date over $30 million in grants. Over to you.
Okay, just a little bit about California Humanities and LA as subject. We've had a longstanding relationship. California Humanities has regularly participated in the Archives Bazaar, as well as other LAS sub activities and programs since the organization was founded. Over the years, many LAS subject member organizations have received grants from us to support their efforts to preserve and share LA's rich history and heritage. On the screen, you can see a list of some, but not all, of our current and past grantees. We hope this short presentation today will encourage you to take a look at the grants we offer and to think about developing an application for a project and to support your work. Okay, before we get into the nitty-gritty of the grants programs, just wanted to kind of give you an overview of what we support. We focus our grant making on supporting what we call public humanities work, humanities-centered learning experiences that take place outside of formal educational or academic settings. These types of programs are often referred to as informal education, the kind of work that museums and historical societies and libraries do, sometimes as the parallel school. But these are programs, activities, and projects that enable people of all ages and backgrounds, any educational level, to engage in lifelong learning using the methods, insights, and knowledge of humanities disciplines and humanities ways of knowing the world. So here are a few examples on the screen of what we mean by public humanities programs. And on the next slides, we'll show you some examples of the kinds of work being done by our grantees.
And now we're going to take ourselves off camera and do more of a deep dive into our funding opportunities.
Okay, let's start with our Humanities for All grants program, which supports a broad range of public-facing projects that engage people in all parts of the state and all walks of life through humanities-centered learning experiences that make humanities knowledge and knowledge production relevant and accessible to everyone. We invite the participation of all kinds of organizations in this program, whether academic, public humanities, cultural organizations, art-based organizations, as well as more traditional humanities organizations, keeping in mind the goal of reaching the broad California public. Okay, here are a couple of different general types or modalities of programming that we support through Humanities for All grants. Participatory activities such as community conversations, dialogues, conversations, film and discussion or reading and discussion series, projects that involve people in actually doing humanities research and producing knowledge, such as, community contributed exhibit or oral history project or writing workshops, anything of that nature. We fund a lot of interpretive programs, whether these are digital or virtual exhibits with accompanying public programs, presentations, lectures, and performances are often a popular type of programming modality. And then finally, narrative-based projects. So again, projects that focus around exploring stories, whether it's stories contributed by community members through an oral history project or writing workshops or a documentary media program, or whether it's exploring other types of narratives such as books, films, poetry, dance, as long as there's some significant interpretive component attached to it. With the Humanities for All programs, we have two different modalities or tracks because we want to support both short-term and smaller scale projects. Often these are used as pilots by folks who want to try out a new idea. So if that's what you're interested in, we would suggest taking a look at the Quick Grant. These are shorter term, just 1 year duration, smaller amount of funding, 1,000 to 5,000, but no matching funds are required. And it's a very simple application and review process. So our next deadline for the Quick Grants will be February 15th next year. And then if you have a bigger project in mind, something more elaborate or more involved, perhaps, that involves multiple formats or a series of programs, you might want to take a look at the project grants. These provide between $10,000 and $20,000 in awards. We do require at least an equivalent amount of community support or organizational support required. So you do have to match the award by the end of the grant period. The application process is understandably somewhat more complicated and involved. But again, really encourage you to take a look at these. Our next deadline coming up will be February 2nd, and then another one in August of next year. So just to give you a taste, we're going to share a couple of examples, one of a project grant and one of a Quick Grant. We'll start with a project grant. This is a wonderful project that's just wrapping up, sponsored by the Autry Museum. Lisa Posas was the project director. And it's a great example of what can be done with a project grant. This project launched in January of 2020, and it included an exhibit, a physical exhibit that drew from the organization's own archival collections, as well as archiving workshops for people. A really interesting program in conjunction with Right Girl, an LA-based organization that supports young women who are developing as writers and communicators. Many collaborative partnerships with local archives and organizations, and a really robust social media content platform that facilitated sharing news stories that were uncovered and revealed from the archives. The Autry still has a virtual exhibit format up on their website, and you can take a look at that. And this was really interesting because it brought something that's often hidden from the public, archiving, and sought to make it transparent and reveal not just what the contents are in an archive, but the actual process of archiving and why archiving and preserving historical memory is so important, especially for underrepresented populations and communities, including women. So this is a really, really interesting project. The quick grant that we're going to show you, it's a really fun project called Little Tokyo Drift that brought together veterans of the Nisei Week car cruises, and the folks who organized what's called the show off, to discuss the history and legacy of car culture in the Japanese American community in Los Angeles. So this was a public conversation, really interesting talk moderated by a professor at Cal State Long Beach that featured culture bearers and veterans of this kind of community cultural activity that takes place every year at the annual Nisei Week Festival here in Los Angeles. So really, really fun project. And this just took place in August. And I believe there are some materials still up on the Japanese American Museum's website if you want to check that out.
Okay, let's turn now to California Documentary Project, or CDP, as we like to call it. Since our inception, California Humanities has been supporting documentary media productions. So that's since the 1970s, in order to make humanities learning experiences available and really accessible to all Californians. Many of the projects that we have funded have secured wide distribution and viewership, including nominations for major awards and screenings on channels like PBS, and secured critical and scholarly acclaim. So CDP likes to support the research and development and production stages of film, audio, and digital media products that document California, past and present. Projects should use the humanities to provide context, depth, and perspective to media products. We tend to look for projects that show potential to reach and engage broad audiences through multiple means, including but not limited to radio and television broadcasts. We've supported a number of podcasts in the past few years, online distribution, interactive media. Some grantees do community screenings and discussions. They'll appear in classrooms, libraries, cultural centers, film festivals, and many more. So there are three mechanisms in the California Documentary Project line. First is research and development, which grants awards of up to $10,000 for the early stages of development of a media project. It does require at least 2 humanities advisors. So some participants in LA as subject have certainly served as humanities advisors on projects based in LA. We have a deadline coming up on November 1st this year. We'll have another next year. Usually the deadline is November 1st or 2nd each year, annual deadline. As a companion offering to research and development, we offer a larger grant for bigger projects that are ready for the production stage. So these are awards of up to $50,000. We do ask for a 1-to-1 match, which we'd be happy to talk about in depth, but can be made through a variety of sources, including in-kind donations. This too requires 2 humanities advisors to be a central and rigorous part of the development of the project, and also has a deadline on November 1st of this year. Lastly, we have a part of CDP called NextGen. This is a program that is really oriented toward youth and the next generation of filmmakers and media producers. This program awards up to $15,000 to programs working with youth in the state of California to develop media skills and humanities-based stories. 1 humanities advisor for this, and you can look ahead to our next deadline in March 2022, also an annual deadline happening in March each year. Okay, so now let's turn to a couple of examples of some recent grantees. This is A Life in Pieces, the Diary and Letters of Stanley Hayami, which is sponsored by the Japanese American National Museum. It's an interactive 360-degree video and immersive virtual reality installation that was created by Noni de la Peña and Sharon Yamato in collaboration with the Japanese American National Museum. And it had its premiere in June at the 2021 Tribeca Film Festival. The project brings to life the family's imprisonment during World War II using the wartime diary of Japanese American teenager Stanley Hayami, who died at age 19. This project traces his journey from home in the San Gabriel Valley to his life in a concentration camp and military service during World War II. You can see this interactive exhibit. It's currently on display at the Japanese American National Museum. So this is a great example of a rigorous humanities project told through media. In the next gen category, we'd like to highlight Girls Voices Now, which is a partner project of Women's Voices Now based in Los Angeles. This project empowers girls and femme-identifying youth in LA County to find, develop, and learn to use their voice in filmmaking and media production. Over the course of a 5-week curriculum, these students combine technical training with leadership and critical thinking skills and form a cohort of about 20 girls, 14 to 18, who learn to make short documentary films. Okay, now we're going to turn to Library Innovation Lab.
Okay, thanks, Kirsten. Okay, Library Innovation Lab is a special program for California Public Libraries that launched in 2017. It provides a learn by doing professional development experience for a cohort of programming librarians or library workers. Over the course of a year, participants research, plan, implement, and assess a new public humanities program that engages a target immigrant population or populations in their community. Typical programs may include performances, demonstrations, workshops celebrating traditions and cultures, oral history, documentary, or narrative activities centered on immigrant stories and storytelling, and talks, lectures, film screenings, and readings that explore the immigrant experience aimed at engaging both immigrants and the broader public. Participants develop skills, gain confidence, and make connections within their communities and with their colleagues across the state. A $5,000 grant to each participating library or library service organization provides risk capital for experimenting with innovative programming. Okay, now please note that this is a special opportunity open only to California-based public libraries or libraries serving organizations, such as Friends of the Library organizations or library foundations. Academic and public libraries are welcome to partner with an eligible library, of course, if they'd like to participate. And many of the participating public libraries do partner with historical societies and ethnic and culturally based organizations and immigrant communities. So even if you're not eligible to apply yourself, you may know of a public library partner that you could work with. So please don't hesitate to reach out to those folks too. Okay, just want to show you quickly one project. This was a cohort member of our 2019 cohort. This is near and dear to my heart as an Angelino. But this is a very successful project organized by Crystal Messer at the Washington Irving branch, which is in the mid-city area of Los Angeles. She organized a series of events highlighting the culture and experience of a different immigrant population within the library service area, focusing on Mexican American, Ethiopian, and Asian, primarily Korean immigrant communities. So one program that she did featured a talk by CSU LA history professor Francisco Valderrama about the little-known history of the mass deportation of Mexican Americans in the 1910-20 period. That was really a great prelude to a community discussion about the politics of our immigration system here in the United States, both past and present, and how, communities of color have really been affected in a very discriminatory fashion in many cases. Another event brought a local AAPI community group to the library to demonstrate and share some traditional Asian foods and recipes that support health and well-being with giveaways of produce. You can see the young man and the young lady there holding produce bags that they gave away to the folks who came to the program. That was a really fun event. And then their final program, celebrating the culture of Ethiopia, was a traditional coffee ceremony, followed by a dance performance in which the audience participated and a conversation about Ethiopian culture and heritage. Those are three really lovely events. They also solicited entries from the community residents and compiled a community cookbook, and then followed everything up with a holiday celebration. So really, really lovely program.
Okay, this next point is not a funding opportunity, but an opportunity for engagement. So California Humanities is coordinating a discussion series called California on the Ballot that creates an environment for Californians, elected officials, journalists, historians, election experts to really talk about and reflect on the past, present, and future of electoral engagement in California. We have a series of free online virtual events that have been ongoing since late 2019 and are ramping up for a second season in 2022. So we just wanted to share with you the opportunity to get in touch. If you have great electoral collection artifacts related to voting history, civil rights, something you think might be of interest, please write to me. I'd love to learn more. Last year, we were able to host a program featuring a number of archives from the LAS Subject group, including the June L. Mazer Lesbian Archives, California Historical Society, up in Northern California, the African American Museum and Archive at Oakland, the California State Archives and Library, and the UCLA Chicano Studies Research Center, who all shared with us some pretty remarkable items from their collections related to electoral history in California. So please do get in touch if this sounds like something that you might be a good fit for. Okay, so this is a page on our website, calhum.org. Bookmark this page if you're curious about funding opportunities. You can return to it anytime to get current information about all of our grant opportunities. You can follow the links to our specific program web pages. Keep in mind that California Humanities generally grants an average of $1 million annually to nonprofit organizations, and we will be continuing this grant-making programming into the next years. So please get in touch. Just to switch gears, we'd like to talk briefly about the mechanics of applying to California Humanities. The first thing to note is that we can only accept applications from eligible institutions and organizations, not individuals. Projects may be fiscally sponsored by eligible nonprofits or local government agencies, libraries, etc. Universities and colleges are automatically eligible to submit applications and hold multiple awards, so long as the projects don't overlap and are directed by different individuals. So here's a list where you can kind of check your eligibility for our programs. And note that for Humanities for All and Library Innovation Lab, the applicants must be California-based. We do use an online application process for all of our grant programs. You can find all of them available on our grant portal at the link above. We generally always require an application form, the basics, proposal narrative, a written statement, project budget and budget narrative, which we provide a template for, and certification. There may also be an opportunity to provide media work samples or other support materials from work you've done in the past, timelines, and MOUs in the case of fiscally sponsored projects. Okay.
Okay, so just briefly a little bit about our review and award process. Although the process is slightly different for each grant program, there are many commonalities. Our review criteria for each program are always articulated in the guidelines, so be sure to check those out. For each grant program, there's a slightly different review process, but they all involve peers, folks from the humanities field, practitioners, as well as board and staff members. The degree of competitiveness is generally averaging around 15%. It does vary by program, and of course is related to the volume of applications that we receive per round. So it's hard to be too specific about that, but again, averaging about 15% funding rate. In terms of the process of notification awards, the timeline will vary by program. All applicants are notified by email, whether successful or unsuccessful. We do have a process to share reviewer comments with you and welcome revised applications for future rounds. Many folks are successful on the second or even third try, if not funded immediately. And again, the schedule for dispersing funds will vary by program. With quick grants, all of the money is dispersed upfront. With other programs, it's, they're often an interim and a final report that's required before all of the funds are dispersed. But all of this information is in the guidelines, so be sure to check those out. Okay, if you are lucky enough to receive a grant, we do want to share with you what some of our expectations are. We do expect grantees to perform the work that's proposed in the approved application or amended subsequently. We do have a process for requesting changes and modifications. But, again, just to underscore that these are project-based grants, not general operating support. We do expect you to perform the work that's outlined in your proposal over the course of the grant period. We do require that you acknowledge the support of California Humanities and the National Endowment for the Humanities, which is the primary source of funding for our regrants programs. In some cases, other funder acknowledgement might be required. We do ask that grantees comply with all of our evaluation, publicity, and reporting requirements. Again, this will vary greatly according to the particular grant program, but every program does require a final report, and in some cases, an interim report. And again, in some cases, not all, we do require that you show that you've been able to match at least on a one-to-one basis the grant funds that you've been issued by the end of the grant period. So you do not have to have funds or resources on hand or in the bank at the time that you apply, but you do need to have a reasonable expectation that you will be able to garner those resources by the end of the grant period. Okay, so a few tips on applications. I would say the most important piece of advice we can give you, and one that is too frequently disregarded by applicants, is to read the guidelines. Sadly, we often receive proposals that don't match our funding criteria or parameters, or that miss the mark by not providing the specific information that we request or following the proper format. So read those guidelines before you apply. Unlike many funders, California Humanities strives to be as transparent as we possibly can in our application and award procedures. To help applicants and to help level the playing field, we build prompting questions into our applications designed to elicit the information we need to evaluate your application. Following the guidelines and instructions and answering those questions will help you make sure that your proposal is as competitive as possible. We do offer prospective applicants a lot of resources, so we do encourage you to take advantage of all of those. We have webinars. In addition to the guidelines, we have FAQs, lots of information available about funded projects so that you can get a sense of the funding landscape. Sample proposals, and of course, program officer advising. So don't hesitate to get in touch with the program officer who is managing the program that you're interested in. And then finally, just some general tips. You can start the online application and save your work anytime the application portal is open, which is generally at least a month before each deadline. We recommend gathering information early on to save time and starting your application early. You can save your work as you go along. You can invite collaborators to join you. But it's always very sad when somebody misses the deadline because those deadlines are hard and fast. Okay. So thank you so much for joining us today, for your attention. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to the appropriate staff member.
Okay, thank you all so much, and we hope to see you at an upcoming grants webinar.